What's the most abstract thing you've ever done? I decided to live my entire senior year of high school like I was the main character in a movie. Not in some cringe way where I thought cameras were following me around, but like every single choice I made had to serve some bigger story. It started when I was sitting in AP History watching this kid named Ben eat lunch alone for like the third week straight. I'm not gonna lie, I usually just minded my own business. But then I asked myself what the main character would do in this scene. Obviously, they'd go sit with the lonely kid, right? So I grabbed my tray and went over. Ben turned out to be this really smart guy who just moved here from Arizona. His dad got transferred for work and he didn't know anyone. We started hanging out every day and he became my best friend. But that was just the beginning. I started writing everything down in this journal like it was a script. I'd wake up and think about what today's episode would be about. When my English teacher, Mrs. Garcia, assigned this huge project on Shakespeare, instead of procrastinating like usual, I thought about what would make this scene memorable. So I decided to perform an entire soliloquy from Hamlet in costume during lunch period. Everyone thought I was losing it, but people started paying attention to me in a way they never had before. Girls were actually talking to me. Guys wanted to hang out. Even the teachers started treating me different. The craziest part happened in March. I'm walking to my car after school when I see these two seniors about to beat the hell out of this freshman kid named Tyler. Now, normally I would have just kept walking because those guys were way bigger than me and I'm not trying to get my ass kicked. But I thought about what the hero would do in this moment. My hands were literally shaking when I walked over and said, "Hey guys, leave him alone." They looked at me like I was insane. One of them, this big guy named Craig, goes, "What are you gonna do about it?" I had no idea what I was gonna do, but I stood there anyway. I guess they thought I was crazy because they just laughed and walked away. Tyler was so grateful he almost started crying. Turns out those guys had been messing with him for weeks, and nobody ever stood up for him. He told everyone what happened, and suddenly I had this reputation as someone who wasn't afraid to do the right thing. But then in April, everything got real. I came home one day and my parents were screaming at each other in the kitchen. My dad was throwing clothes into a garbage bag saying he couldn't do this anymore. My mom was crying and begging him to stay. I went to my room and started writing in my journal about what was happening. Then I stopped and thought about what this scene needed. In a movie, this would be where the son goes after his father and has that heart-to-heart conversation that changes everything. So I grabbed my jacket and caught the bus to my Uncle Danny's house because that's where my dad always went when he needed space. I found him sitting on the porch drinking a beer and looking miserable. I sat down next to him and said, "Dad, we need to talk." He looked surprised but didn't tell me to leave. I told him about my whole movie experiment and how it taught me that sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. I said I was scared of him leaving and Mom being alone and our family falling apart. We talked for 2 hours. He told me things I never knew about how stressed he was at work and how he felt like he was failing us. I told him about how much I looked up to him even when he thought I didn't. By the time we got home, he had decided to try counseling with Mom instead of leaving. 3 years later, they're still together and happier than they've been in a long time. My dad still brings up that conversation sometimes. The weirdest thing is that Ben, the kid I sat with at lunch, ended up being valedictorian and got into MIT. Tyler, the freshman I helped, started following my lead and standing up for other kids who were getting picked on. Even Craig, the guy who was about to beat up Tyler, ended up apologizing to me later and said seeing me do that made him realize he was being a dick.